Welcome to Easy Eats with Chef Yves. My name is Chef Yves Duchesne, and I'm here today at the Greener Villages Learning Kitchen with Nada Whiltshire, the owner of and top baker at the Rocky Lemon. I first met Nada when we worked at a local market together, and I tried one of her lemon squares, and they were dynamite. I don't even have to make lemon squares anymore because I go and see Nada.
Thanks.
So today Nada's going to show us how to make biscuits and lemon curd.
So like you said, we're going to make a classic biscuit and some really great lemon curd. So I like classic recipes because they can be changed as you're making them if you want to just suit your fancy for that day. So this is a really nice classic biscuit that we're going to start making today. So we have about 3 cups of flour in here, and we're going to add our baking powder, which is 2 tablespoons, our baking soda, which is a ½ teaspoon. We're going to add just a little bit of sugar just to bring out some flavor. And we're just going to mix it around. Now, biscuits are those things where everyone's like, you have to use like your dough cutter, and you don't want to get your hands in there, and you don't want to warm up the butter. And I'm going to tell you to just throw all that out the window. And I'm going to make a lot of chefs really angry, but just get your hands in there, get the flour all mixed up with all your other dry ingredients. You want to use room temperature butter. You want to be able to work it in. What happens sometimes when people tell you to use frozen butter, it'll leave globs in your dough, and when that bakes, it just kind of melts out, and it'll leave like a crusty flake, but it's not super flaky and delicious. So you want to work the flour with this butter until it's nice and sandy. So we're using some room temp butter, getting that in there.
I just like biscuits because, like you said, I'm complete opposite where bakers and techniques. When it comes to biscuits, I used to watch my grandmothers make biscuits, and it was a handful of this and a pinch of that and this and that, and I could never get that recipe right. But they knew it off the top of their head. So that's why I say biscuits are a really nice starter pastry, I guess, to start, because
it is.
You can kind of play with it.
It is. It's really nice. And like I remember learning this in school, and I mean, we were taking frozen bricks of butter and we were grating them, and I mean, there were so many accidents because your hands are slipping in this butter, and it's like grating your knuckles, and you don't want to do that. You want to keep knuckles out of your biscuits.
But it's a great technique, though, is if you are going to do that, if you're making pie dough and stuff like that, to grate your butter frozen, just it breaks it up so it gets mealy right off the bat instead of having to work it through.
So absolutely, if you want to do frozen butter, definitely grate it, even chop it into little pieces, but I prefer doing room temp butter because it works into the flour better. It gets spread out evenly, so you get these beautiful layers throughout the actual biscuit. Yeah. So that's why I'm going to make a lot of people angry, because they'll say, no, you have to have it frozen. You don't. You just don't want to work your butter too much into your dough that it becomes a paste before you add any liquid. So with the liquid, what we're going to do is we're going to add some buttermilk to this, and we're going to have that as a really cold ingredient into this. And what that'll do is it'll actually cause the butter and the flour to like kind of like suck in together, and it'll keep your butter from melting throughout the dough as you're working it. So right now we're just kind of getting that butter all nice and mealy in here.
Perfect. So I noticed that you put a little bit of baking soda in there. Is that to counteract the acid in your buttermilk?
It is, yes. Yeah, you want just a little bit just to help it rise, because the acid does cause it not to rise and get as flaky as much. So we're just going to add a little bit of the baking soda into that. I also added a little bit of salt in here too, just to flavor it up. And why I like this recipe is because it's very forgiving. So if you wanted to have it a little on the sweeter side, you can add a little bit of sugar. It'll give it a nice caramelization. You can add lemon zest, orange zest. You can add any kind of extract that you have, like if you wanted some nice vanilla, just a little bit of raspberry even, and it's just a really nice biscuit. You
can turn this into a savory biscuit too, right?
Yes, so you can do caramelized onions at this stage and then add in your buttermilk. You can do fresh chives, some cracked pepper, cheese. You can definitely add some cheese to this. So I just want to show you what this looks like when it's all nice and mealy. So you want it to be like sand. See, when there's this big pieces like this, I know a lot of people like to leave it like that. I like to break it down just a little bit more. You don't want to work it in really hard. I'm using a really light hand. It's just falling through my fingers so that that butter gets in to all the flour.
So like pea size, maybe a little bit smaller.
Yeah, a
chunks
little
of
bit
butter.
smaller, because what happens is a lot of people, when they do it with the frozen butter, with pie dough or biscuits like this, it'll bake, but then it'll leave really big pockets of like either just oil or just emptiness. You want it to be flaky. You don't want it to have little pockets of just,
like your bread dough. I get it. Now let's touch a little bit about our. We're using buttermilk today,
right.
but some people don't always have buttermilk. So if you want to make buttermilk, is there a trick?
Yes, so you could take your regular whole milk, you can use cream even, and you'd want to add a capful of vinegar to that and just mix it, let it sit for a little bit, and then you can use that as your buttercream or buttermilk. Even if you didn't want to use that for that nice little tang, you can substitute it with any cream you have at home, any milk you have at home. You could choose like a nut milk even if you wanted. The buttermilk brings a nice richness to the...
It does. And what surprises me is she said vinegar to your milk to make buttermilk. I thought the Rocky Lemon would have said lemon like I use.
It's true. I am a fan of vinegar in the cream it just brings something different.
Yeah.
But I would definitely zest lemons in here.
Can you tell me a little bit what makes buttermilk buttermilk?
It's the leftover, essentially, right? Like it's...
Of the butter, yeah.
Yeah, so it's when you're making butter, you're taking cream and you're essentially mixing it, and what's left is that liquid, and that's buttermilk. So it's all the like sour water that comes out of it, really.
Which is great, because then nothing gets wasted, right?
That's right. So we're gonna add a cup of. Whoop, did I just go over?
You might have. I'm not sure.
We'll eyeball it a little bit, but it's about a cup of buttermilk. So we're going to add it in. You want this really nice and cold, because that is what's going to help the butter with the flour.
So it's just going to firm that butter up just a little bit, right? Okay.
And get your hands in there. Baking really is like all about the feel and the touch. It is a science, yes, but you do want to use your senses too. You want to see it bake. You want to see it get caramelized. You want to feel the dough so that your butter is not being mushed in too much. So I'm just going to work this in a little bit more, and then we're going to put it onto the tray, and we're going to roll it out for our biscuits.
We'll be right back with Easy Eats after this.
We've now just taken our dough and we've dumped it onto a surface. Now, you don't want to add a lot of flour when you're rolling out your dough. It just makes for a very dry and like a terrible mouthfeel in your biscuit. So we just want to get it together. We don't want to overwork the dough. So we're just going to kind of mush it all together in here. And this is what I mean by like you want the butter to be mixed well into the dough. So you can still see nice little patches of butter here, but it's kind of throughout the entire dough. It's not just large pieces here and there. So that's what's going to give it a really nice flaky texture once it's baked.
So I noticed that it's just coming together and you're just pushing it together.
Right.
You're not kneading it like you would a regular bread dough or
That's
anything
right,
like
because
that.
we don't want to, I mean, it would take quite a bit to work up the gluten, but you don't want to work that butter into this dough, because then you lose your flakiness and you lose the little pockets that you'll have. So we're just going to flatten it out a little bit more.
Yeah, they'll turn out, but they'll be a stiffer biscuit.
Yes, yeah. And so I like a smaller, I should say thinner biscuit, because I like the caramelization that it'll get all around it. You can also keep them nice and large when you're cutting them and rolling it out. So I'm just going to use my rolling pin just a little bit.
So how thick should I roll that, or should we roll that?
I would do maybe about a 1/2 inch.
Okay.
So I think that's what it kind of looks like here. Now, you'll have a lot of people that throw that flour, but like I said, you don't want to add a lot of flour to this. I used to have a teacher in school who would always tell me that all the flour you need is in the recipe already, so you don't need to add anything extra. We're just going to do nice square pieces here.
Perfect. So I remember my grandmother saying when you punch them out, say with a glass or a cookie cutter, that you need to punch right down and avoid the twist.
That's right, because that twist will kind of almost seal in those edges, right? So you want to just cut them nice, and then you have nice little edges for when it starts to rise. So you can already kind of see in here where the butter is and how it's going to create those layers.
Flake. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also noticed too, if you twist the glass, your biscuits grow sideways, like
That's
one of those growing worms.
Off to the side. So we're going to get a tray here, and we're going to line it with parchment.
Now, if you don't have parchment, you can just grease the tray as well, right?
You can, but grease it really well, and that will also give it a nice crusty bottom. It'll be really nice and caramelized, so if you like that in your biscuit, do it. I personally like that because I think it just brings out an extra note in your flavors. So we're just going to take the remaining dough, and we're not going to knead it or anything like that. We're just going to smush it back together, kind of fill in any holes. And we're just going to take this rolling pin as a quick one over.
So tell me a little bit about the Rocky Lemon, Nada. I know that we've met at the market and I've seen what you do, but I know that you do more than just baking.
That's right. So I do have a commercial kitchen. I don't have a storefront quite yet, but if you are searching for any of my goodies, you can always order online. And you can also actually get them at 2 shops here locally, at Sequoia on Queen Street and a beautiful new cafe in Woodstock called the Sunnyfield Farms. Or just order online from me. Right. And so what I do is pretty much anything. I love food, and whatever kind of pops into my mind, I'll make. But generally, it's really homey, nostalgic foods that will bring you back to your childhood. Lots of squares, cookie sandwiches, homemade Pop-Tarts, caramels. I also do wedding cakes and catering for any kind of lunches and stuff like that. So yeah. And I do have a kind of a vintage inspired food truck. So that'll be out this summer, hopefully located in Burton and kind of around town, where you'll be able to find those kind of things scratch made Dunkaroos and Joe Louis and little passion flakies. So all the good stuff that takes you right back to your childhood.
Perfect. So those look like they're ready to bake. So
we're going to do one more thing just before we do that. We're actually going to brush our butter milk over top, and we're just going to add a little bit of extra salt onto it.
So for these biscuits, you're going to want to set your oven at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to cook them for anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes.
So we're going to coat them nicely.
This is a step that I always avoid when I'm doing it for myself, but
yeah,
I always regret not doing it when they come out of the oven.
There's nothing worse than getting a pale biscuit. You want that nice color on it. And then we can top it with a little bit of sea salt.
So you're using sea salt, why?
I like sea salt because it'll actually hold its shape when you are baking it. You can just use regular salt as well. It'll just melt into the biscuit. But a nice flake salt or coarse salt like this is really nice because I like that little bite when you go to take.
Okay, because I've seen a lot of other bakers or pastry chefs use sugar, so they'd use turbino or a little brown sugar on top. It just notice that you're using salt instead.
Yeah, I like to mix the savory and the sweet together. So if I'm going to have a nice tangy sweet lemon curd, I prefer more of a savory biscuit to it.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we're going to pop that into our 400-degree oven. We're going to set it at 400 degrees, and we're going to leave it for about 20 minutes. So I like to start it off at a lower temperature because every oven's different. So you can always add extra time to it. You just can't take it away. So we'll start at 20 minutes and see how they turn out at that time, and we'll go from there.
So yeah, they take a little bit longer than the ones that I usually bake because like I said earlier, about 10 to 12 minutes, but I guess yours are a little bit thicker than mine.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're going to get hopefully some nice caramelization on that. And while that's baking, we're going to actually make a really nice lemon curd. So I don't know if you've ever made lemon curd from scratch, but it is quite easy to do. And I prefer this method, which is the bain-marie method. We're going to place our whole bowl with our mix over top of the hot water. I like doing that because it's a slow cook. It'll cook your eggs and your sugar and your lemon juice all equal and nice together. Whereas if you did it straight into the pot, you run the risk of like scorching the bottoms or curdling your eggs, and nobody wants curdled lemon. No,
safety first, definitely. When you, especially like we said, when you're limiting ingredients and eggs and butter and milk have gone up in price, so you want to make sure that you're not messing up. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. So we're just going to separate our yolks, and we are using 6 yolks today. And the next thing is that you want to save these egg whites, because if you're going to do a really nice lemon curd for your biscuit, you can easily whip these guys up with some sugar and do like a really quick meringue and toast it on top if you want to have it maybe for like a Mother's Day brunch and have it a little fancier for your mom.
I like saving mine for pavlovas.
Oh yes, and then topping that with this lemon curd would be beautiful as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I always crack and separate my egg yolks like this.
Yeah, well, maybe you can come back and we can make a pavlova, and then we can show
that would be wonderful.
Uses.
Absolutely. So just a little trick I learned. When you get some eggshells into your egg whites or into your eggs, just use the actual eggshell to help fish them out.
That's right, keeps your fingers cleaner.
But apparently I heard that it's also attracted to that. I don't know how true that is, but it works out well, so I've just always used it. Now, what I did here was I added a little goldfish into my egg whites, which is just some egg yolks. And you don't want to have any of that because then your egg whites won't actually whisk up.
No, that's right. Yeah, just a speck of yolk and it'll ruin the
That's
fluff
right.
effect.
That's right. And so I'm going to do this process in a specific way because what happens is that when you add your sugar into your egg yolks and you even leave them for just a couple of seconds, what will happen is the sugar starts to coagulate the egg yolks and then it won't break down. So you'll have tiny little beads of egg that just won't break down and be smooth. So we're just going to wash our lemons before we zest them. We want to make sure that they're nice and clean. I mean, they are just coming straight from the store, so we don't know what's on them. We want to try to wash off any kind of wax that may be on them to protect them. So I'm just going to dry them off, if you don't mind passing me some paper towel.
Paper towel for sure. There you go.
And we just want to get the nice zest in here and all the delicious oils that it has.
I said Nada's right. You don't know who's been touching the produce that's in the grocery store.
That's
you
right.
assume that it's clean, but it's always good practice to wash
Safety
everything
first,
or
right?
anything. Safety first,
Absolutely. So we're just going to add our zest, and we're going to do a zest of 1 lemon. Of course, you can always do more depending on how you like it. I really like a good pucker in my cheeks. I find it's not a good lemon curd if you're not puckering. So we're going to add the 1 lemon.
So lemon curd is the most popular, but you can do this with almost any kind of citrus fruit, couldn't
That's right, absolutely. Orange is really nice. I've done it with grapefruit. Grapefruit is a little harder, so you want to take your time with that, but a lemon or a lime curd is also really delicious. If you have key limes, if you're lucky enough to get some of those, that also makes a really delicious curd. So we got that in there, and we're going to do about a 1/2 cup of lemon juice. So we're just going to squeeze the lemon juice into it.
So not every once in a while I like to squeeze my lemon juice through a strainer just to avoid the pips.
Absolutely, you can 100% do that now. What I like to do is I like leaving any kind of pips in the curd as it's cooking, because what will happen is we're going to strain it just before we add the butter. Okay. So anything that's left in, if you happen to get an extra seed in there, once we strain it, it'll stay. And
that's to watch in case you may have curdled the egg a little bit?
That's right.
Yeah.
You want to have a nice smooth lemon curd, and this way you can hide your mistakes before you serve it to anybody when you're straining it.
That just gives you a nice smooth product. It's not
Absolutely.
hiding mistakes. It's
Absolutely. Alrighty, so we're going to get this last lemon in there, and I would say that's about a 1/2 cup. Give it a nice whisk, and then we're going to add our sugar to it.
So not fresh lemons always a must, or can you use the Rio lemon that you get in a bottle at the store?
So fresh is always nicest. It's a really delicious and fresh flavor, but the lemon juice in the store is fine as well. If you don't have any lemons handy, but you have that nice little jar of lemon juice, you can definitely use that as well. It just has a lot more lemon oil in it, so it tames the flavor down a little bit as you're cooking it. So we're going to pop that on top of our bain-marie. And we're going to whisk it gently every so often. We don't want to whisk it a lot because we don't want it to foam. That gives it a different texture when you're doing it that way. So we've got our lemon curd on top of a bain-marie, which is essentially a pot with hot water and the bowl. So it's this little contraption here. And so it's indirect heat, which will heat the entire bowl evenly versus directly on the stove.
So bain-marie is the culinary term, but you guys would know it more as a water bath, and that's basically what. But yeah, the culinary terms we like to throw around as chefs, so we take it as second nature because we're in the industry and we forget often that people may not know.
That's right.
Why are we giving Mary a bath? But no, it's just a water bath.
Absolutely, yeah.
We'll be back with Easy Eats right after this break with Nada. Welcome back to Easy Eats. I'm here with Nada Whiltshire of the Rocky Lemon.
Wonderful. So we have our lemon curd here on the bain-marie. It's almost nice and thick, so we're going to let that cook a little bit more. So I'll show you what you want it to look like. So you want it to coat the back end of a wooden spoon, and it's called nappe. So when you run your finger through the lemon curd, you want it to hold its separation there. So this is pretty good. So we're going to strain it. But before we strain it, we're going to add our butter to it. And we've got about 3/4 of a cup of butter here. And I'm just going to add that to the bottom of the pan, or a bowl, just to get that started once the lemon curd hits it.
And that's going to give it a little texture and a little bit of a gloss to it.
It is, and it's going to be that really nice coating taste that you get in a lemon curd.
Is there a specific degree that you want to bring it up to?
I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to tell you I don't know what that is.
That's okay, because neither do I. But
which is terrible, because like I've said before, it is a science, but I'm very much a cook with the feel and the smell and sight. It's something that I grew up learning from like my mom and my grandma. This is what they taught me to do, is to always use that and not to rely on so much what your oven is telling you or what your time is telling you. And definitely I know there is a time and place, but
absolutely, yeah. No, you cook with your heart, and I mean that's exactly what a lot of us do.
Absolutely. Alrighty, so I'm going to strain that. And so there were a few seeds. Luckily, there's been no curdling, which is nice. So now I'm going to whisk in this butter. And again, I don't want to whisk it too fast. I don't want to create any air. I just want this butter to be emulsified. So that means I want it to thicken this lemon curd really nicely. I don't want it to be oily. I want it to all come together really nicely.
So the butter, what it does is it stops the cooking process as well, doesn't it?
That's right.
And you have to add it cold, right? You couldn't say, if you wanted to emulsify it, you couldn't do like you were doing a hollandaise or say a vinaigrette and slowly add it in a steady stream.
That's right. So you want this butter nice and cold because you, like you said, you do want it to cool down the temperature of the lemon curd, but it also creates a different texture for this. So whereas the hollandaise is like super nice and creamy and you want it to be a smooth and runny consistency, with this you want it to be nice and thick. And of course we won't have time today, but you do want to put this in the fridge before you serve it so that it has time to set up.
But you could serve it warm, because I do like a nice warm lemon curd on, well, especially on those biscuits when they're fresh from the oven.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or like as a really nice topping over pancakes or waffles. Those are really good.
Well, that's a great idea. I never even thought of that.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's just, lemon is such a versatile thing in any kind of cooking. It's just that perfect ingredient to bring out any flavor that you're already cooking with, or as a solo thing, it's just really nice.
It cleanses and it gets you ready for the next thing you're going to put into your mouth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, so we're just about there with our butter. Alrighty, so we're just gonna finish that off, and then you can put it in any airtight container, pop it in the fridge, but don't pop it in right now. You don't want to put anything hot into the fridge. You want this to come to room temp, and then pop it into a container and put it in the fridge. And so our biscuits are done now, so I'm going to just pop them out of the oven.
Oh, they look fantastic.
Oh my God, I feel bad for you guys. It smells so good. Like with the lemon and the biscuits, oh, it smells delightful. So this is what we're looking for, like these delicious caramelized edges. You can see how it's already like really pretty layers in here.
And then
like
the bottom's nice and brown.
Beautiful bottom. I mean, come on. This looks delightful. Okay, so we're just gonna serve it up. And we're just gonna split them. You can add some whipped cream now. If you had any like clotted cream to this, that'd be perfect.
These are perfect for shortcake. So
yes.
Strawberry shortcakes come early June. These would be fantastic.
That's
with
right.
that lemon curd over top. Thank you so much, Nada, for today. Biscuits, one of my favorite things. And again, you brought the lemon, and that's why we got you in today.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.